And I
Totally
think
agree.
in my life, I spent somewhere between 15 and 20 years in the martial arts before heathenry came into my life. And I think the trials and tribulations of levels of ascension through martial arts kind of forged me into the makings of a good heathen.
Yeah, I would say that is another, like we talked earlier about, working on a farm or, kind of being raised in a community that helped the transition into heathenry be seamless. Um,
Yeah.
I've heard the same thing, like you're talking about with members of the military.
Hmm.
So anyone who has served in any of the military branches, you know, the they understand, they know what it means to be responsible and rely on others in a unit, in a and sure, that might really lean heavily into like the warband culture
Right.
of things, which is,
Yeah.
it's a thing, but
It's a thing,
other
but if you have to fight, are you
right.
prepared to fight?
Yeah. Have you gone through those trials? Have you gone through those challenges? Have you been tested? Have you been proven?
I know what it means to be beaten.
Yeah,
It's a very powerful statement.
right. And that's what, that's another thing that the martial arts, being exposed to that, those sorts of lessons can
Right.
teach similarly, right? Obviously, not in
Yeah,
maybe the
yeah.
same
It,
degree or
it, it, it's definitely
military.
not the same like
Yeah,
hierarchy background of belief systems. It's not the same religious structure. No, no, no.
right.
But when you talk about spirituality and how you cope under pressure,
Yes.
what drives you, what makes you keep going,
Yeah.
what source of energy sparks that flame?
Do you think that uh, do you think that some of like I want to say like, we don't really have sacred texts as heathens. It's not like a Bible or anything. But do you think that some of what like we'll just use the Havamal as an example, right? Because it's pretty it's practical stuff. Like it's common
It's
sense type wisdom. Like, do you think
you're
that?
right. It's common sense. You
Yeah.
know, a good majority of it is common sense. When I started, and I've read it before, but I haven't read it and dove into it. You know what I
The
mean?
Havamal.
The Havamal. Yeah, I
Uh,
have. I have the study Havamal, which has three different translations plus the Old Norse, and then on the
right.
same page has a line for your notes. Um,
Yeah.
it's it when you look at various translations, the work's been done for us is one piece of it. All right, cool. I don't have to go back and translate Old Norse. I don't have to learn a language, right? It's been translated for us. Um, Historically and modern days with people like Jackson Crawford. For me, it started off as like a little bit of a hobby. All right, what can I get from this that makes sense today?
Mhm.
What works? And for a majority of it, it mostly still works. I wouldn't suggest that the sections where Odin is attempting to court uh, the giants and his
Look.
dog.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I,
Gudrun.
I
Yeah.
don't think that those are appropriate in a modern day and age. And there are aspects of it that if you change one word from him, he to her, it can apply to both the male and the female attributes
Mhm.
um, in a modern age. Now it can. It, it it probably wasn't so 1,000 years ago. You know,
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
I mean, like morals and ethics have changed over time, and I always go back to when people, because this happens in Christianity, as well, but like people cherry pick um, a verse of scripture or something from the Bible, right, to fit what they're trying to push as an agenda. And I
right.
feel like the same thing can happen or has happened or whatever with heathens and the Havamal.
Like
They'll
I
take,
am
well, what the stanza in this says is that, and they'll use that as like a justification of their actions.
no
And I'm like,
this
you're taking it out of context, guy. You're like, realize what the world was like 1,000 years ago or even longer, and
regardless. It's one of those things of, again, but back to, keeping an open mind about it is, if this was written down and then subsequently translated by a bunch of people, and those translations have been recorded for the past X numbers of years of our history, they probably mean something. And I feel like this is kind of like one of those pieces of history that was laid down in front of you, to give you the opportunity to open up your mind,
mhm.
and just like, these things can apply to your everyday life in some fashion.